Be your own person. Don't follow what we all did. Don't follow just the fact. I went the fugitive route. I loved looking for people wanted for felony warrants. He's like, don't go the route that your dad went just because it's your dad. Don't go the dope route. Don't go the route of your grandpa of looking for being a supervisor. They said the biggest advice he gave me was find your own path of what you like to do. Truly what you like to do, and you will be happy with what your career becomes. Everyone who worked with my dad, the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, the police, they live by the motto of never forget. And it's a whole different world up in Chicago when they talk about never forget. It's the support you receive through all of them, even the Gold Star families. It's never ending. My dad's coworkers always helped out. This guy his name's John McKenna, basically became like my father, my second father. And Christmas time, he was picking up money from everyone on the watch. People who didn't even serve with my dad, years later, would drop off checks to my mom for Christmas. So we make sure that she can financially pay for toys. Baseball, going to baseball games, soccer games. They would always come out, take us to the games, help us with different stuff. They really all stepped up to play the father figure role and also to never forget their brother out there.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Blue Bloods is a compelling police drama centered around the Reagan family, whose members have dedicated their lives to law enforcement in New York City. At the helm is Frank Reagan, the police commissioner, whose unwavering commitment to justice and integrity sets the tone for the entire family. The family's deep-rooted connection to policing spans generations, with each member inheriting a sense of duty and service from their predecessors. Frank's father, Henry Reagan, is a retired NYPD police commissioner, adding a rich legacy to the family's law enforcement heritage. Tragically, the family has faced the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Frank's youngest son, Joe Reagan, was an NYPD officer whose life was cut short while serving on the force. Joe's death is a poignant reminder of the risk and dangers faced by those in law enforcement, casting a shadow over the Reagan family and shaping their perspectives on justice and duty. Despite the profound loss, the Reagan family remains steadfast in their commitment to upholding the law and protecting their city. Frank's other children, Danny, Aaron, and Jamie, continue the family tradition by serving as respected members of the NYPD. Through its gripping storylines and compelling characters, Blue Bloods offers a nuanced portrayal of the challenges and triumphs faced by those dedicated to serving and protecting their community while honoring the enduring legacy of a family bound by duty and service. Today's guest is a real-life Blue Blood, a fifth-generation police officer. Tragedy struck early in his life and resurfaced early in the pursuit of his own police career. Cullen Gordon learned early in life what it meant to never forget, and now he assists frequently with the Dallas chapter of the Brotherhood for the Fallen. All right, Cullen Gordon, welcome to the show. We're getting started here. This is Kent Wolverton. I'm with Joe King today. We've got a special co-host, Sergeant Roy Morano. Roy is the president and founder of the Dallas chapter of the Brotherhood for the Fallen. Roy, you want to say hello?
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, we've got Cullen Gordon. He's a fifth-generation police officer. He grew up in the Chicago area. Was it actually in Chicago?
It was a mixture of both. I lived a little bit on the north side, and then the south side, and then through high school kind of pushed my way out to the suburbs. So when I went to high school, I moved to a town called Darien, which is on the southwest side, and so it's just a little bit nicer and better schools than Chicago had.
Never heard of her. But yeah, Chicago. I'm so poorly traveled. Like, I've been to Chicago one time. It might have just been Illinois. I don't even know if I was actually in Chicago. My brother went Navy, and I'm pretty sure that's where they had their
Great
basic
Lakes.
training. Yeah, you got me. It was a long time ago. All I remember is eating some hot wings that were way too hot, and my lips swelled up, and I tasted like one of them. You know, we ordered wings, and the cook came out, and he was like, "You sure you want this like atomic, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, we're from Texas, right? That's what we do. Eat spicy foods." my brother ate two, and he's like a world champion in my eyes because my lips swelled up so big it was horrible, like for 3 hours. So typically when we start these, we start to talk about early on in life, and that's kind of where tragedy struck you first, right?
It did.
Talk about your father and what went on with that.
So early on in life, I was moving around quite a bit. So my mom, and my dad met when they were in the military at Fort Bragg. So early on, that's where I grew up, very, very young, like between 1 and 2 years old. My dad got out before my mom did, so he moved back to Chicago, got into policing, and then my mom ended up taking a job out in Las Vegas, so they ended up getting a divorce. So when I was 5 years old when the accident happened, I was actually living out in Las Vegas, but during the summers, I would spend the entire summer with my dad in Chicago. So since my dad was killed in August, I was there when the accident happened. So early on, it just bounced around a lot. And then after the accident, that's what made my mom leave the circumstances that she was in. She was experiencing a lot of domestic violence that, when I was from a very young age, has stood out with me. And I remember more of that than I actually do of my own dad. And so after that accident, and after my mom went back to Las Vegas, we packed her bags and moved to Chicago with very little. And so we started staying with family from after the accident on until we got set up on our own feet.
So the number of officers who actually experience some sort of domestic violence, whether it's in their own relationships or growing up with their parents, is staggering. You know, it's almost something that drives us to get into this profession, it seems. But your dad, you know, I did a little research, and he was a pretty established dude. An Eagle Scout. You know, that's
growing up. Yeah.
That's not like just going to the Boy Scouts and creating a derby car. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into actually achieving the Eagle Scout.
Oh yeah. My grandpa is one who got him into it. My grandpa was an Eagle Scout growing up was that the 60s? So it was a lot bigger, I would say, back then becoming an Eagle Scout than it is now. But my grandpa drove my dad a lot to become an Eagle Scout. And he took a lot of pride in it too.
Yeah, I know only a handful of people that I grew up with. I never got into the Scouts personally. My brother did, but I kind of stayed out of it. I wanted to play outside and not have organized stuff, so I kind of stayed out of it a little bit. But the people that actually stick with it long enough to achieve the rank of Eagle Scout, you know, that's a pretty distinct privilege there. He also wasn't just in the Army; he was an MP, right? So he already knew policing was going to be part of his life.
For us, I think it's also like everyone knows that option's on the table, and just with our family background, it was natural for him to just go right into being an MP. So, family background, what is it that your family is kind of known for here? Policing. For generations, everyone's done the same thing, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And usually when you don't go into it, you're kind of like the black sheep of the family, and I think there's one. We have a great uncle who became a firefighter, and
exiled.
Yeah, nobody lets him forget it.
So, when did the policing in the family start?
If you trace it back, it would go back to the Chicago outfit days in the 20s. One of our family members became a special investigator, so it was cool growing up. Like we still have the original photos from like the Chicago outfit days. So like the St. Valentine's Day massacre. We have original photos from that. We have the Frank Nitti when he shot himself, that we have original crime scene photos from those days. Like, it's just, that's when it all started with us.
That's wild. That is a long time. I mean, you're talking about 100 years of police work.
Yeah, so they all come with good, when I ask them questions, they all come with very good advice that they got from their family from before them, and then now they can pass it on to me. So it's a lot of, just through the years, a lot of knowledge that gets passed down.
I'll bet a lot's changed, having to explain to them that you have an electric gun and a camera on you constantly. And
well, my grandpa, when I go home, every single time doesn't let me forget it. He's like, I did 35 years without a vest. Oh, in my days, the new top-of-the-line gear was the speed loader. I was like, yeah, so it's changed a little bit, Grandpa.
But that's interesting, though, because your grandfather was an assistant chief in Riverside, right?
He was. He retired, yeah, as assistant chief.
So that's not just grunt work, but actually climbing up the chain of command there and figuring out how things work and stuff I don't want to have anything to do with, but I respect the heck out of the people that do, man. Trying to run a police department has got to be just taxing. That
was his baby. I would say everyone in my family who's done this job, they always say, find one thing and become the expert on it. So I have cousins who went the gang route. I have family who went the narcotics route. I have family who my uncle went an SRO route. My grandpa went the supervisor route. That's became his thing, and that's what he went with. So that was the thing that he mastered, and he ended up loving it and has no regrets with his career.
Good deal. So how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 older brothers.
2 older brothers. Are they both officers?
Nope, neither of them are. My brother Malik, he works basically with like environmental science essentially, and then my brother Zach is a MBA photographer.
So they left all the pressure on you to carry on the legacy.
Exactly right. That's hopefully one of them will get into it later in life, so it's not all on me, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a photography thing. You said MBA?
MBA, yeah. He works for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
That'd be a cool job.
Oh, he loves it. I don't think he's ever going to ever stop doing it.
I've always wanted to get into photography, but I'm horrible at it. And it's expensive, right? I mean, if you're going to start putting money into equipment and lenses and actually getting out there and doing it, then you got to really be down for the cause. And I'm kind of like a part-time, like I enjoy it until it turns into work, and then I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, of course.
So growing up in a police family, right? Like, what did that actually involve? I mean, were you guys like running police drills in the living room and listening to the radio constantly?
No, I wouldn't say that, but it's definitely, you learn a little bit more. So depending on who it was in the family, they'll talk about what they did at work, or so like my uncle talked to him, he'll be like, we did bywalk bus. And from like 5 to 6, 7 years old, you're learning what bus are. You're learning what probable causes are. You're learning what probable cause is. You're learning search warrants are. You're learning arrest warrants, looking for wanted people. Are they returning back to their house? They talk about police stuff with you. So when I went to the academy, what people were talking about wasn't new to me, which is, I would say, it helped. So like you get into terms, and they teach you terms. They teach you slang terms. Like all of that was, okay, I've heard this from when I was 5 years old until now. So it just became a little bit like you have a little bit of basic knowledge. Zero experience, but basic knowledge.
I'm sure that's pretty helpful to at least understand what you're talking about. I mean, I remember going in the academy, and I never thought I was going to be a police officer, right? I didn't know anybody that was a police officer. So when I showed up at the police academy, I was like, all right, here we go. Like this is all brand new to me. And I could imagine having a little bit of insight from anybody would be tremendous and helpful, but you had it from basically every side,
and from all different aspects too of because policing, I mean, it isn't just one thing. I think when people who are in this profession, when they think about policing, they think of patrol, but there's so many different aspects of policing. With detective bureaus and the vastly different types of crimes. And then you get into the tactical operations. What narcotics does is entirely different than what the gang unit's going to do. So that's why I believe that if you're not in this like life and don't understand it, it's hard to understand it. and if that makes sense. Like there's so many different aspects of policing that I believe the normal public just doesn't understand.
You mean it's not just I got pulled over this one time and I wasn't even doing anything wrong?
Exactly right. Yeah, every single time. That's the very first thing they say. I wasn't doing anything wrong, and then you'll list it out to them.
There was 5 guys going faster than me, and they pulled me over. I don't even understand what that was about.
Every single time.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
No, that's the one thing I get out of everybody, and I'm like, I haven't written a ticket in 15 years. You know, like I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You know, if you get caught speeding in Dallas, man, you must have really been screwing it up.
That's what I'm saying. I know one group of people who will pull you over for speeding. That's the red tabs. So I'm sorry when people. That's all I say when people are talking to me. Like, oh, I got pulled over for speeding, got a ticket. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It absolutely blew my mind. So when I first started, and Joe, you can attest to this, we didn't have many radars in the cars. Like, you had to, number one, you had to go to whatever handheld radar system school we had, and nobody got that school. 2, there was like maybe 3 squad cars at each station that actually had the old school radar in it, and nobody knew how to use it, right?
So nothing's changed over the years.
Yeah, well, it was, I doubt you have the in-car radars anymore.
Nope. It's all the handheld ones now.
So it was all pacing, you know, like you had to really be moving to get pulled over for speeding. And it blew my mind that a city the size of Dallas didn't have that equipment. And I was just like, I don't, like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Or cages.
Yeah, cages in cars, that was something that came while we were busy working, and it was probably not that big a deal for Joe being of smaller stature over there, but when you're 6'1" and they put a cage in your car and you're used to moving that chair all the way back, now you gotta figure out how you're gonna sit down and get in and out of the car. That's I mean, you're a pretty short fella yourself over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What are you, about 6'4"?
6'6".
Yeah, dear Lord, I didn't think it was that tall, but he's been sitting down the whole time. Yeah, so getting in and out of those little squad cars, it was different. You know,
they're always Chargers.
Well,
when I was expecting, you know, coming to Dallas, like, oh, they'll have Tahoes, Explorers, and then I see Chargers. I was like, oh god, this is going to be a long time patrol getting out of this car.
So we had the Crown Vics, and then they went from the Crown Vics to the
Impalas.
The Impalas, and those Impalas were god awful, man. Front wheel drive. You know, I tried doing police work in a front wheel drive car, like.
That was my first car, Chevy Impala.
You're used to that back end breaking out on the Intrepids, and it didn't. You know, it was front end drive only, and horrible. They sat super low to the ground, so you were pulling the oil pans off of them all the time. Like, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. We went from that to the Impalas, which were tiny. Right, I don't know if they're actually physically smaller, but they felt so much smaller, and we just kept adding equipment. So you went from the little green box to the MDC to the bigger tablet that had a removable keyboard that would basically impale your partner if you had somebody driving with you, and then they put cameras in there, so they had to have more equipment. I don't know how we fit in these cars anymore.
I know. I'm glad I'm at where I'm at now.
Yeah, for sure, man. Something's got to give pretty quick here, because they keep giving you more equipment to carry too, and the stuff when you're in the smaller car.
And then now the trunks are filling up too, because people are carrying 40s and pepper balls, and and they still have the shotguns, which I didn't expect that one. Felt like I was policing in the 1960s now. When they're explaining to me in the academy that they're not going to teach us how to shoot a rifle, but it's a shotgun.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And now I told my grandpa, he's like, that's what we carried in the 1960s, a Remington 870. I was like, yep, it has not changed.
But ours have a synthetic stock on them now, so it's different. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
100% different.
It's more tactical now.
I remember I had a partner, shout out Brad Walker. He used to always check out a shotgun. Mm-hmm. And he would take his pin and he would drop it down the barrel and pull it out the breech, right? And I asked him one day, like, why do you always do that? That's really weird. What are you doing? And he was like, well, I didn't do it one day, and there was a dumb sucker stuck in the barrel. Could you just imagine? Like, you're in the situation where you finally get to use a shotgun, or you have to, right? And a little dumb sucker comes out. And it's like, it's a mystery flavor. You know? I couldn't imagine that actually happening. So yeah, every time he'd take his pin, just drop it down and pull it out the bottom. So were you involved in the Scouts at all?
I was not.
No.
I was not. I growing up, after the accident, the 100 Club of Chicago, they donated basically slots to this camp called Camp Manitowish up in northern Wisconsin.
Common spelling.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I ended up going there. I kept going back growing up, and then they basically teach you the same stuff Scouts teach you, like wilderness skills. And then over time, less kids went, and I kept going. And over time, as you get older, if you're prove that you're competent, you'll go on a lot longer of trips. So I kept going back, so they just kept donating me more slots. So eventually I became the only kid who would go. So the longest trip I did was when I was 17, and it's 64 days of kayaking in the Inner Passage in Alaska. And so you actually have to be competent with wilderness skills because it's just you, a couple other people, you're sleeping in tents, you're cooking your own food, you're getting airdropped food, and if something goes wrong, you're getting care flighted out, and there's not a lot of people coming, so you have to be competent with just survival and also like TAC med, how it is, you have to be competent with those skills.
That sounds like a really interesting thing to do that young, like I couldn't take a 64-day trip now, like
No.
I take 4 days off from here and I feel like I'm behind for 3 months, but yeah, that sounds like a really cool deal. Get more into that.
So
how did you start off with that?
So it started off with the 100 Club of Chicago basically is like a statewide ATO. They assist officers statewide who have been injured, who are experiencing troubles with paying for school, and fallen officers, their families. So this summer camp donated, it was 10 slots at $2,000 a piece. And that's how much it costs to attend just the normal summer camp. They donated 10 slots every year to the 100 Club. So the first year, they asked me, because I was in the age group, if I wanted to go. I think I was 12 or 13. So I went, and you start off small, like 4 days. And then you go back. I went back again, and it went up to 5 days. Then I went back again. Okay, now you're doing a week. And then just kept going back, so the trips kept getting longer. So a few of the trips I did was like canoeing in the Quetico. It's the Boundary Waters up in Minnesota, but it's the Canadian side. Backpacked at Isle Royale National Park. That's it's the smallest national park. It's an island in the middle of Lake Superior. And then I backpacked in Idaho for 20 days. I canoed up in Saskatchewan, Canada for 30 days. And then I did my 64-day trip and then kayaking in the Inner Passage of Alaska.
That's not just, going camping one night and having hot dogs over the fire, right? That's a pretty intense deal.
Oh, no, you actually have to know how to read a map, set a bearing on a compass, read topography, and you're learning that when you're really young. So learning learning navigation at Southeast wasn't hard for me, whereas some people, they spend their entire phase of training just struggling understanding north, south, east, west.
Yeah.
So that, I would say that was one of the biggest impacts and helps it had for me as a police officer, is understanding even where I'm at, where I'm going, and it helps, I believe, when you get in a foot chase. The very first thing that goes is people's sense of direction. So I think that's the biggest skill that it's helped me as a police officer.
So I have a horrible sense of direction. Anybody who's ever been in a car with me will tell you, I will get turned around rapidly. And when I first got to Southeast, I was on fourth watch. My first phase of training was fourth watch. So it's dark when you get there and it's dark when you leave. You can't see a street sign. Most of the ones in South Dallas are missing anyway, so it didn't help to really look for them. And every time I would pull out of Southeast, the station, right on Jim Miller, I would take a right.
Going towards Elam?
Yeah, it didn't matter where we were actually supposed to be going. I would take a right, and I don't know if it was just easier to turn right because you had to cross traffic. I would turn right, and I would drive down to those apartments all the way down at the end, and I'd take a left, and my trainer was just like, "Where are you going, stupid?" She let me drive wherever I wanted to. Until it was like, hey, okay, you've been driving for 15 minutes and you're going the complete opposite wrong direction. Come on, stupid, figure out where you're going. And I was like, I don't have a clue where I'm going. And for whatever reason, that seemed north to me, right? I'm heading true south, which is pretty rare in Southeast. to have a true north-south, but I was heading true south every time thinking I was going north. And for 7 weeks, I could not figure that out. And I'm not the brightest guy when it comes to the navigation side of things. So I envy the fact that you learned that early on in life and could actually apply it when you got here, because navigating these streets, especially when we had Oak Cliff too, where you're on one street and then it turns into another street, and then you make a right and a left and you're back on the same street. You just turn, you like went a block over and you're still in Sunnyvale.
Do they still do the MAPSCO in training or no?
Some do. I've heard Rodney Nevels will still do it. Will still take the MDC and will make you figure out on a MAPSCO where you're going. And I'm happy I never had a trainer like that. I can look at the MDC, and I would say Mike Holguin was one of my trainers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. Yep. He was one of my trainers, and how he taught it to us was we look at the MDC and we'll see where it's at. It'll be Prairie Creek and Bruton. We're at the station. He'll show it to us, and he would always say, pick the nearest major intersections and go. Once you're in, if you're with a partner or something, you can guide yourself in. You can see, all right, I'm going to turn on this 4th street on the left, and then you're pretty much there. So that's how he taught it to us, which is pick a major intersection and get to that major intersection first. Once you're there, you can just guide yourself right into where you're going.
Makes sense to me. I mean, I have a great memory, except for when it comes to don't turn right on Jim Miller. Apparently, I couldn't remember that one. But if I looked at the map and I could chart the territory and say, take a right here, take a left there, take a right there, like I didn't have to look at it again. I always would, just to verify, because I didn't want to screw up again. Like when you're on training, you're super nervous about everything. At least I was. So if I know what directions are there, like it's stuck in my head. But I would always verify it, and my trainer finally just snatched it out of my hand. It was like, you're not looking again. Just get to where we're going.
Yeah.
By the way, it's the same place we went every day. Like on second watch especially, we ate at Whataburger down at Lancaster and 20 every day.
Mine was Cracker Barrel off of 35 in, what is that, DeSoto? with the hammer. Yeah. Ray Cunningham.
I love that dude. So what about before you joined the police department? Do you have any other jobs?
Not really. School. I mean, because I got into policing really, really young, and then so I just basically did school, got out of school, and then started applying around to police departments, and then I came to Dallas.
Why did you pick Dallas?
I guess the short answer would be that they called first. So I got from some of the episodes I've listened to, that's a very common theme. So when I was applying around, I applied at DeKalb. The police chief there, it's DeKalb, Illinois. It's kind of like a college town, but it's changing because of a lot of people from Chicago are leaving. So you're getting a lot more vice lords, gangster disciples. Gangs are starting to move into the town. So they're experiencing actual policing now. It used to be just a college town. So there's an Illinois State police officer. His name is David Bird. He became the director of patrol and then became the police chief over there. And I talked to him, and he told me, apply, and we'll do the whole process. And once you clear, I'll hire you. There was a story with him with my dad, and he's like, I owe it to your dad. If you apply here, I'll take you. And then I applied at Illinois State Police and then Dallas.
So you didn't ever even look at Chicago?
I did. I've saved the application. I filled it out. I never turned it in. And it's always on the table, but after talking to family, going to Chicago for various different reasons was going to be, in my mind, something I wanted and something I didn't want at the same time. And it's something that my family sure did not want, is me to go to Chicago, just due to the fact of everything with Dad, everything that's happened afterwards with the city. They just wanted me to stay clear. And so I didn't apply, but that's why Dallas, I believe, was a good option for me, is because I wanted to stay busy. I want to actually do police work. I don't want to do suburban police work. Right. So Dallas is a major city, so I was like, I'm going to apply to Dallas because everyone kept telling me, go to Texas. go to Texas. They actually like their police there. So I was like, okay. So when I looked on a website, I saw Dallas was hiring. I was like, okay, I'll save it. I was driving home. I was driving I-55 going home one night, and I see a big billboard. It's join the Dallas Police Department in the middle of Chicago. So I don't know whoever was in charge of recruiting, but hey, you got me from it. But yeah, so I ended up applying in Dallas.
What year was that?
That was 2022. I dropped my application in August of 2022.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
For you to get hired that quickly.
Yeah, I got hired on, and they tried to get me started in, it was January of 2023. They tried to give me a week notice to start with the class, and I said, absolutely not. I was like, I need to pack, moving from Chicago. They're like, oh yeah, you can start the academy next week. I'm like, no, I need some notice. So they gave me the April start date. So just started the process and moved out here to Texas.
That's wild. Hey, here 1 week, pack up everything you possibly know and find a place down in Dallas, and we'll get you a job. Let's go ahead and start.
Yep.
Hey, Cullen, so I know that you have a couple uncles. What departments do they work for?
My uncle Bob works for Berwyn, but at this rate, I'm pretty sure he's worked for almost every police department in the suburb. In Chicago, he's bounced around nonstop. And then my uncle John, he was involved with the Chicago Police Memorial. He didn't actually get into fully policing. My great uncles, every single one in Chicago.
Okay, because I know both of your uncles. What was the advice from them whenever you came to Dallas?
My Uncle John, the biggest advice was the financial advice, because that's what he does now. Is he works for the it's called the credit union. So basically, they help cops with financial advice, with loans, not buying flashy stuff, not buying this new sports car. So he gave me a lot of financial advice to start the 401k, start the 457, pay 7% into both. Make sure you're within the 14 to 15% range. So he's told me the advice financially from a young age getting into this. And then my Uncle Bob, he's in his own right, just like my dad is a pretty decorated police officer. And he said, just be your own person. Don't follow what we all did. Don't follow just the fact, I went the more of the fugitive route. I loved looking for people wanted for felony warrants. He said, don't go the route that your dad went just because it's your dad. Don't go the dope route. Don't go the route of your grandpa of looking for being a supervisor. They said the biggest advice he gave me was find your own path of what you like to do. Truly what you like to do, and you will be happy with what your career becomes. So I've taken that and just trying to figure out my own path as I navigate the complicated world of policing, of what I enjoy to do as Cullen Gordon, and not try to live up to be the second Bobby Gordon, the second Robert Gordon, the second Mike Gordon. Because if I try to live up to be the second of someone, I will always fail. Because I will never feel like I lived up to their expectations of, instead of being the second of them, be the first me.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great advice. Yeah. The financial advice isn't bad either. That's something we probably all need to hear more of, especially early on in our careers. No. You spend what you have, right? I mean, that's how it works. So if you can start investing early and you don't even realize it's not there when you actually start making more money. We've kind of danced around a little bit, but I really kind of want to get into what happened with your father on August 8th of 2004.
So on August 8th, 2004, during that time, my dad was doing jump out boys. So he was never really meant to be with a younger police officer that day, but for various assortment of reasons, call-offs and stuff, they had no one to put this guy in someone's car with a senior officer, kind of like a little T in a way.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. So my dad was never meant to like really be with him that day. So it was towards the end of shift, just a normal day. The call was homeless people were sleeping in like an apartment, like a project home, and it's right at the end of shift. And my dad's like, all right, do you want to take it? And the guy's like, yeah, I haven't really dealt with too many homeless people. So my dad's like, okay, it'll be a good training call, a quick, easy call. So they were traveling eastbound on Jackson, and as they came into the intersection of Jackson and Sacramento, my dad had the green light, was traveling, and then a drunk driver ran the red light at Jackson, Sacramento. He's traveling southbound. He ended up T-boning my dad at the intersection, and the impact, it was a hard impact. The ANIs, I think, estimated that the drunk driver was going about 60 to 65 miles an hour, and there was no yaw marks. So it was just a straight 65 miles an hour right on the side of a patrol car. Neither officers, my dad and his partner, weren't wearing seatbelts. Just during that time in Chicago where they worked, it's common to bail out of your car. You will on-view a robbery, you will on-view shootings, you will on-view drug deals, and so you have to bail out of your car at any given time, so no one in that time wore a seatbelt.
Right.
So when the impact happened, both of them were ejected. My dad went out the front windshield, and his partner went out the passenger door. The car rolled several times and ended up coming a rest on my dad. And his partner landed in grass almost head first and split his whole head open. And officers on scene, I've talked to them about it, they could see basically inside his skull into his brain. And so, but no one knew the impact happened. 911 call was placed in saying, hey, there's a police car that just got hit and it looks pretty bad. The first car gets there and they instantly put out a 10-1, which a 10-1 in Chicago is a officer assists here at 15. So everyone's coming, and they find my dad's partner, and he's in rough shape. So they get him out, but my dad's still outstanding. So they're saying, all right, Gordon, where's Gordon at? They don't know where he's at. And eventually they look under the car and they see my dad is actually pinned underneath the squad car. And I have a lot of respect for all of those guys that came out there. They wouldn't let my dad die in the street alone that day. All 12 of them made sure to lift that car up off him. Pulled him out. This guy named Billy Rogus, great human being, was the first officer to pull my dad out and instantly began chest compressions. He was gone. He was gone in that intersection, and I have a lot of respect for all of them. So I know they're going to listen to this. So Rogus, Tim Gansella, Jerry, Andy, Mario, all you guys, like, I appreciate you guys for what you did that day and what you've done afterwards for me and my family. You guys really are lived up to your motto of never forget. So when the accident happened, my dad went to Stroger, and he was pronounced at Stroger Hospital. It's one of the best trauma hospitals in the country, so we can hang our hats on that they tried their best.
Right.
His partner, when he ended up making it, and the drunk driver went to the hospital too, and he was pronounced dead about 3 hours after my dad. And everything that came out afterwards, he was here illegally, never had a license, didn't have insurance. After the blood draw happened 3 hours after the accident, his blood alcohol level was a 1.177.
Wow.
So 3 hours after the fact, it's probably a little even higher when the accident truly happened.
Yeah.
So I'll say after that accident, my family fought really hard, and we passed Michael's Law in 2006, which makes it if you are an unlicensed, uninsured driver and you get a DWI in the state of Illinois, it's a felony 5, which is the equivalent of like a state jail felony here, and that's first time. So it increased a penalty for a DWI, which I think all DWIs should be higher, because you don't realize the impact that it has. And unfortunately, it takes losing someone to figure out the impact of what drunk driving can do. And that's why I have a lot of respect for the Penton family. I know I've reached out to them, talked to them, and they understand what I'm talking about with. I believe drunk driving should be a higher penalty. It's unfortunate that it takes so long in the state, in Dallas County, to go to court on it, because I did a DWI out here where it was the 9th time she's been arrested for a DWI, and we're still waiting trial for the first one. And I'm the 9th in line.
And that's how it happens here, right? And drunk drivers usually aren't just like, okay, I'm going to stop because I got arrested one time.
Nope.
They continue and they continue, and typically it's an issue that they have, right? They have a chemical dependency at that point. They have to be drinking. But if we don't do something to keep them from getting behind the wheel, tragedy's right around the corner.
Yeah.
So, growing up in the police community, right? After your father had passed, you kind of grew up with a lot of police officers still.
Yes. All of those guys that I mentioned, everyone who worked with my dad, the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, the police, they live by the motto of never forget. And it's a whole different world up in Chicago when they talk about never forget. It's the support you receive through all of them, even the Gold Star families. It's never ending. My dad's coworkers always helped out. This guy his name's John McKenna, basically became like my second father. And at Christmas time, he was picking up money from everyone on the watch. People who didn't even serve with my dad, years later, would drop off checks to my mom for Christmas. So we make sure that she can financially pay for toys. Baseball, going to baseball games, soccer games, they would always come out, take us to the games, help us with different stuff. They really all stepped up to play the father figure role and also to never forget their brother out there. So they all did really wonders for us. And the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation did great. They even paid for my school, and the 100 Club did too. And everyone really truly lives by the motto of never forget. The support you receive even after they pass is outstanding, and it's continued to this day.
So you experienced that growing up, and now as a police officer, do you feel like there's still that community within the people you work with?
For here, yeah, I still believe the brotherhood's there. It's just different. It's different here in Dallas than it is in Chicago, and that's also due to various reasons. Chicago has mandatory live-in requirements. So if you're a Chicago police officer, you will live in the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago is half the size of Dallas and has 4 million more people. So you're on top of each other. So you live next to all the guys you work with. Whereas Dallas, you got guys who live all over the place. Some are driving an hour away to work every day. And your buddy might live on the north side of Dallas and you live on the south side of Dallas. So I believe here it really takes planning for you to hang out with your friends from work. Whereas there it's, this dude lives 3 blocks north of me. Okay, yeah, we can figure something out. It's just, it's different.
So with my limited travels up north, I have heard that the community aspect of the Chicago PD is pretty remarkable, that they really take a pride in being police officers there in Chicago, and I don't really know how to say it, but the community aspect is very much apparent. They just the overall pride of what I'm doing and the fact that I'm living in this neighborhood, and they want to take care of the neighborhood. Can you expound on that a little?
Yeah, so there's pride in with what you do, being a Chicago police officer, because that city, it's an extremely violent city. Like where my dad worked, on the west side, it's West Garfield Park, the 11th District. It is 4 square miles, and it'll be good for easily 300 homicides a year. And that's about what Dallas is at total. And 4 square miles, it's a South Dallas on steroids. And so you take pride in when they patrol, it's a lot smaller areas. I mean, Southeast, I think they said it's 68 square miles.
It's huge, yeah.
And the biggest district there will be 9, 10. So put 50 cars in 10 square miles, you're going to on-view a lot of stuff. So I think the pride in it is because they experience, I would say, just dynamic situations in patrol. I would say a little bit more than how we experience it, I believe. But Dallas makes a lot better investigators across the board. I believe wholeheartedly, because I think your patrol naturally has to figure stuff out a little bit more, because the calls you're going to sometimes takes you 20 minutes to get out to a call. So a lot of times suspect's gone. So you're figuring out who's done it, why they did it, where they go, who do they hang out with, what's the friend's address. Okay, I'm going to drive to this address and figure something out. So you're really playing, I think you have to be good at your craft, whereas them, it's a lot more in the act. They can catch stuff in the act more because they have 50 cars in 4 square miles.
Right.
So it's kind of 2 different styles of policing. And so for them, I feel like they have it's kind of more of like a pride in like, oh yeah, like we experienced this with my buddies. We on viewed a carjacking, got a car chase, and it's a lot different. So then when you and your buddies get off work, you all live next to each other. So it's not uncommon to go to the bar to grab a beer and just goof off with your friends, and then you walk home. It's just the community aspect's a little bit different just due to the nature of just this, how the city's set up, whereas Dallas is a lot more spread out.
It is truly policing your own neighborhood, it sounds like.
It is, and it's always 2 neighborhoods, Mount Greenwood and Edison Park. If you're Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, those are the 2 neighborhoods you live in.
The history of Chicago goes way back to organized crime and gangs and mafia, going back to the Capone days. Mm-hmm. What are some of the gangs that are prevalent there now?
Oh, God. I want to say there's a lot of just generational. You got gangster disciples, you have vice lords, you have Latin kings, you have blood disciple killers, you have Mickey's Cobras, you have Four Corner hustlers, you have spinoffs from everyone. It's endless over there, and the neighborhoods haven't changed. So when my dad was the police to when my grandpa was the police, all of the neighborhoods have been the exact same. This neighborhood's vice lords, and then you cross that street, you're in gangster disciples. Now you cross that street, you're in Latin King territory. So it's a lot different.
Generational criminals.
Yes, it's all gangs. I don't know if Lieutenant Taylor talked about it in his episode, but it's not uncommon to see my family's generational police officers, and not uncommon to see, all right, this family's been generational of Black Pea Stones is another gang, and it's not uncommon to see that. My grandpa was a gang member. Okay, my dad was a gang member. Now I'm going to be a gang member. It's the complete opposite end of the spectrum, but they're still playing the same game.
I can't help but think of Mickey's Cobras and Dodgeball. That's the only thing that came to my mind. So I'm not. It's like the Buttercup Thugs. You remember that? Over off Buttercup Lane. It's just the toughest gang name you can come up with. We're the Buttercup Thugs. Get out of here, man. Crazy. So let's talk about your time in the academy. What between academics and PT and DT? What was your struggle point? Or did you just kill it?
I wouldn't say I killed it. I wasn't the top performers, but also it wasn't challenging.
Yeah.
I can see how it can be, but I believe if you're athletic and also kind of squared away, understand that you're not the coolest guy ever, I feel like the academy is not going to be too bit challenging of a time. Whereas I believe a lot of people in the academy start to struggle when they're in your face, like I'm the best, and I believe that it's better to stay humble so you can coast through the academy a lot better. Because I've seen guys way stronger than me, way more athletic than me, struggle in the academy because Sergeant Lee will make sure you have a hard time. And Sergeant Petty. They're great people, and they're both very squared away, and I loved how they ran the academy when I was there. But that's why I feel like it's good to get on their good side. It's a lot easier of a time.
Those are 2 great dudes. I mean, gosh, I could write a book of V-Lee stories that I've even just heard, not the ones that I've experienced. But
it's just sayings for me. He doesn't realize how funny he is because of just how ridiculous. Like, it comes off a little bit, and you're like...
And you don't expect it because you look at him, and he is like a police action figure. Him and Petty both.
100%.
In a Class A uniform... Those are the dudes that you see on TV, right? And then the stuff that comes out of their mouth sometimes, because they're both a little bit country, but they're hilarious. But great dudes all the way around, man. I love those guys.
I feel like Sergeant Lee gets taller the more you stand by him. We're the same height, and somehow I feel like I'm still looking up at him in formation.
Yeah, no, he's got that personality where everybody looks up to him. It's pretty incredible to watch that dude throughout his career. And just the way he's navigated the department has been pretty interesting too.
So, funny story about him. One day, this is his first day there. And we're doing his first day back. He's like, okay, let's go for a 3-mile run. How does that sound? And everyone's like, it sounds good, Sarge. All right, let's do it. He goes, great. So he's getting everyone's backstories from their class advisor as we're passing by. So he hears mine from my class advisor, and so I come back around, and he's like, Gordon. So I stop, talk to him, and he's like, so your father was killed in the line of duty? And I said, yes, sir. And he's talking to me, and then it hits to him. He's like, why the F are you not running in place right now? You're on a run, so run. So he's making me just jog in place, just looking at him as he's having a full conversation with me. It goes on for like 20 minutes. People are finishing their runs by now. And then he just looks at me and goes, all right, go. You can finish your run now. And I'm a mile behind everybody. So I was like, great. All right. I guess we're doing this.
Who was your class advisor?
His name is David Willie over at Northeast.
No, that's going to be one of the victims of a 3,000 person department. I don't.
He's been patrol his whole time. Great guy. He gave you a very real idea of how Dallas works, and didn't sugarcoat it, and was straightforward with us. Which is what I appreciated about him.
Well, it's important to have the right people out at the academy, right? Because that's the introduction to everything that you're going to learn and everything you're going to do. And man, I remember I had Christopher Hands was my class advisor, class advisor, and he left us like 4 months into the academy, and he went up to Frisco. And I ran into him just the other day at an off-duty job. He comes up to me, and he sees me, and I kind of recognize him. I'm like, I know this dude from somewhere. And he says, Wolverton, hey, who was your class advisor? And I looked at him, and I was like, you left me. And he was like, I thought it was you. I was like, man, I thought it was you too, but I couldn't tell for sure. It's been 20 years, we all look a little bit different. He's like, man, that's crazy though. Like 20 years later, and we run into each other at a restaurant. But yeah, we lost our class advisor, and we got a second one in the middle of it. So it was, at that point, you get two different perspectives, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Not just one guy but they both came from the same station, because that's how class advisors work. They pull one from a station at a time.
Yeah, we had one. Our first one, all she did was eat burritos and donuts in the back, and they booted her after 2 months, and then we got Ed Coffee.
Yeah?
So that was a good one.
No, Ed's amazing, dude.
My coordinator was your classmate.
Who's that?
Maurice Addison.
Oh, yeah, great guy. Love that dude.
Isn't it interesting? Like when I talk about it, like I don't like a whole lot of cops, but as soon as you bring up a name, I'm like, oh, I like that guy,
Oh, Addison's one of the good dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Detroit.
So what academy class were you in?
I was in 385.
385. And have you heard much about the Dallas Police Academy before you came?
Yeah, everyone. I mean, of course, all of you guys, like, they come there like, oh, back in my day, it was hard. Now it's soft. It's changed. And you're like, yeah, I understand. Policing's changed over the years. And then even when I was working the fair, I'm having 4,000, 5,000 badge numbers come up to me, and they're like, oh, you guys are all soft compared to what we were like. And I'm like, awesome. And they're like, you have a zip code on your chest. My badge is 4,000. And I'm like, that is awesome.
Yeah,
like,
nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, did you load muskets while you're on patrol?
But there's a little bit of truth to the fair assignment. It used to be Class A's, and you had to wear your hat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically standing and smiling the entire time. And I know they try to hold that line now, but
no, it's not the same.
Yeah, no, Chief Hall was like, it's too hot for Class A uniforms and hats. Like, let's be a little bit more reasonable. And true enough, I mean, September in Dallas is still a little sticky. And
oh, yeah.
You worked the fair your first year?
So I'm in the special response group.
Okay.
So Chief Schultz put us out there a lot of the nights. So it was exactly how you think it is. You stand in place somewhere, and you stand there for hours. And it wasn't bad, honestly. It was cool for different people to come up to you. And it's kind of like, in a way, you're still policing, but it's very big on community policing. You get tons of kids who come up to you. You have just the brown shirts will come up to you and tell you their police stories, and you listen to them because I'm sure that they just want to talk to someone.
Yeah.
So it was cool to talk to some of them. I remember one of the guys, like I was on when JFK got shot, And I'm like, oh my God.
It's a long time ago.
I was like, it's been a little bit. And I think that they all just want to talk to people. So the fair wasn't bad.
You went to OU?
I did. I went to University of Oklahoma.
So you came to Dallas for the OU Texas
Oh,
game.
of course.
So you've had some encounters with Dallas police before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
what was your opinion or perspective of them?
Not bad at all. I mean, they never messed with me. It was cool. Now I realize from working it, I was one of the obnoxious kids because now working as a police officer, I'm like, oh my God, I was one of these kids. I really was.
Running around screaming boomer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I know all of you Texans are not the biggest fan of University of Oklahoma, but
Not even a little bit. Not even Toby Keith.
Oh, that's why when I tested, I came out for OU Texas. That was my testing date. And it's
a bold move.
So the last day I finished everything, which we were sort of my board interview. The lieutenant had a brother who worked with my dad. So he knew for months I was coming to test. So I test, I go home, get changed, and I'm back at OU Texas. And I'm on my buddy's shoulders
Texas
after.
OU.
It's Texas OU, thank you.
OU Texas, all right. So I'm back over there in it was a crazy comeback. It was 2022, so when Caleb Williams came in, we ended up coming back and winning the game. I am up on my buddy's shoulders, and we're cheering because we just won. I get a tap on my shoulder, and I look back. It is my background people, the people who did my PT, like my PT test, and they're like, "You're an OU fan?" I was like, "Ah, crap. Yeah, yes, sir." He goes, we're going to have to drop your application.
Man, if we did that, we wouldn't have anybody working here. Texas had a rough go for a while there and lost a lot of fans. Thanks, Mac Brown. What about Academy classmates? You got anybody you want to give a shout out to? Anybody you had to sit there and study with or just endure the torture of 8.5 months?
God, I love everyone in my Academy class. It was
how many people?
We started with 30 and we ended with 22. So I liked everyone in my Academy class. We all got along. I'm partners with one of my classmates, which is great. It's Sasha's brother-in-law. So he's my classmate. We work well together. I have a buddy who went up to Channel 2. His name's Nuns. One of the most squared away and just badass dudes I've ever met. And I won't expose his background too much, but doing 12 years and doing special forces in the Navy, you learn a little bit. So, I mean, the RBT, when they teach you, they always say we're training for the lowest common denominator. So when we're doing like a contact team or building searches or how you make entry on a building, it's going to be for the lowest common denominator. And when out afterwards, we would do our little thing, and he kind of laughs. And then I'll ask him, I was like, how would you actually do this? And then he was always a phenomenal resource of just different stuff that I've applied to like my patrol. And so he's been great for us too. I loved everyone in my Academy class.
That's good. It's tough when you have people in there that you just don't get along with. I had a few that we kind of bristled at each other a few times, but for the most part, it's an interesting dynamic. You go through 8 months of basically you don't like. I didn't enjoy the Academy. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't something I looked forward to every day. So you kind of go through that with that whole group, and now if I run into the classmates throughout the department, I'm like, man, I don't like that guy. I do like him. Hey, it's good to see him again. And you remember all the stuff that you went through. It's been 20 years, and you're like, man, I still remember that guy. You remember when he was skinny, I remember we were all a little bit smaller than we are now and not so much gray in our hair. It's an interesting dynamic of having actual Academy classmates. And I don't know that, a lot of the different departments, smaller departments that don't have their own academy or it's a really short academy, they don't experience that quite the same. So I like that aspect of Dallas. But you touched on Holguin, right? Mike?
Mike Holguin.
Who else did you train with?
My trainers were Mike Holguin, Chris Sloan, and Ryan DeMag. It's Paul DeMag's son. Mm-hmm. Those were my 3 trainers, and all had extremely different styles of how they trained. Holguin's very big on by the book, how to be a police officer, don't shy away from a call. DeMag was more just kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of book. Didn't care with what you wanted to do, and he would be there to make sure you're doing it safe and learn on your own. We're both learning together a little bit, but because he was brand new to training when he got me, it was his very first rookie he's ever had. So he was learning too, and I'm learning how to be a police officer. But he was big thing with him, and I liked that about him was that he let me do the calls I wanted to do, and he taught me from those calls of what I wanted to do. And then Sloan was like Holguin, but the Deep Grove version of Holguin.
That's a compliment and an insult at the same time.
Oh, he loved the Deep Grove, and now I try to avoid that place like the plague. It's.
So I used to go to the Deep Grove. Like that was the other place I knew, right? I knew don't turn right out of the station anymore, right? Stupid, stop doing that. And I also knew that if I went to the Deep Grove, I was probably the smartest person around. there was a good chance that I might be the smartest person in the zip code. So I spent a lot of time out in the Deep Grove myself. You know, the 7-Eleven on Fourth Watch. You know, hot chocolate and coffee will get you through the night. But yeah, it's a different world out there, man.
It's kind of like they're policing their own. Like it's weird out there, and I just find it funny. That's why I think I love Southeast so much. Because you get South Dallas, you know what you're in for. You get the Grove, you know what you're in for, and then you get the Deep Grove, and you'll never know what you're in for because it's a whole different world out there. And I like how you get, I don't know, to me, from what I'm used to with Chicago, South Dallas is very city to me. The Grove's very suburb to me, and then the Deep Grove is just country. And I might hear a banjo on a call.
Yeah.
It's just a whole different world.
That's a warning, right? When you hear the banjos, it's like, all right, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Oh yeah, that's like I think it was the VFW off CF Han. We worked a 7-person stabbing, and everyone was stabbing each other. And we get there, everyone's like, I don't know what happened. And you're at the hospital with them, like all of them go to Baylor. And they're all like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened either. I don't know. And then Assault is like, make it a prelim because we don't have a complainant and we don't have suspects, but we have 7 people stabbed.
Sounds like a Wednesday at the Neon Cowboy. All right, before we get too far into your career, let's jump back into the academy and your time there and how you met Sergeant Moreno.
So I met Sergeant Moreno. Well, at the beginning, I knew who he was because he went to Chicago with Sergeant Matt Baines, to do a podcast with Rick Caballeros, the president of Chicago Brotherhood for the Fallen. He was doing they were doing a podcast with him, and it was during the time frame where my dad's foundation was doing the annual rooftop. It's at Wrigley Field. So how Wrigley Field's set up, there's these big buildings, and you can look into the stadium and watch the game from these buildings. So they're called rooftops. People rent them out and do like fundraisers, stuff like that. So both went to there, met my family. They met my grandparents. They met the Chicago guys who helped raise me. They met my uncles. They met everyone. So they said like, oh, a couple Dallas guys were there. Just everyone. I heard some stories, and Roy's saying it wasn't him, but I heard one of them threw up outside Wrigley Field. I don't know who it was, but
I heard whispers of this trip and that it was pretty memorable and unmemorable at the same time. Like,
oh yeah, we there's no way we can drink like we can't drink like Chicago, but we had a great time.
Oh, so I knew of them, and in the academy, it was September 28th. I was at the range. It was the week of the academy where you do like the pistol stuff and shotguns. So it was at 7, roughly around 7:30 in the morning. I get a call from this old sergeant, and he said, "Hey, Johnny Mac, there's no easy way to say this," is what he said. He said, "But Johnny Mac died." And I said, just was disbelieved because this man is essentially the biggest one out of all of them who helped raise me. Great human being. He said he died, and then hangs up the phone. And I'm about to go stand in formation with Sergeant Maines, and I just absolutely have a breakdown out in the field, and it's just in disbelief that that's all I get is, hey, John died, and all right, go shoot pistols now. My mind's all over the place, so my class advisor let me gather myself, and he's like, all right, you either can go home or you can shoot. He said, I'll figure something out. And so I said, okay, like right now I'll shoot, just clear my head because I don't know what's going on. So after the first break, Sergeant Moreno and Sergeant Lee come, and Sergeant Moreno's like, hey, just going to let you know, John died. I don't know if you know. And I said, I do. And trying to still hold it together, trying my best. And Sergeant Lee instantly says, you do know it's okay to grieve. And instantly I have another breakdown. Just start crying and crying, just because of that. Even now I'm still dealing with it. I've had 20 years to deal with my dad's death. I've accepted it, and I've not moved on from it. I know the event still happens, but I can look at it in a different light. That death I'm still dealing with to this day. To me, I lost 2 fathers before I was 24 years old. Most people still have their dads, and they're 40, 50, and I had lost both of mine before I'm 24. So, but I'll say the one funny story of what came from that was Sergeant Lee, and his, God bless his awesome advice, but he told me, he's sitting there in his little voice, and he's like, all right, Gordon, see, us as men, we need to compartmentalize everything. We need to shove it down in a little box and just don't touch it. And my class advisor's like, Sarge, I think that's the worst advice we can be telling him right now. And he goes, oh, okay, just disregard then, and then just walks away. And just now I can look back at that and just laugh. Sergeant Lee, it was his way of helping.
Right.
That was just his way. So appreciate it. But that's how I ended up meeting Roy.
Roy, give us your perspective on that.
So it was pretty early because I don't come in until about 10 o'clock, and I get a call.
11.
Yeah.
12, whatever.
I get a call from Chicago. It's about 4 different guys that called me. Rick being one of them, which is he's the Chicago president for Brotherhood of the Fallen, as well as Cullen's uncle, John, I believe, right? John's the financial guy.
He helps them.
So John, Cullen's uncle, calls me around 8 in the morning, and they break the news to be like, hey, Johnny Mac just passed this morning. And I know Johnny. I've met him a couple of times from times that I've gone to Chicago. And they're like, we're trying to get a hold of Cullen. He's in the academy. And I haven't met Cullen at this time. I mean, I knew about him because they all called me. They're like, hey, we got one of our guys joining the department. So I was pretty excited about having Cullen over here in Dallas. But I never met him because he was in the academy. I didn't want to, be a distraction or anything like that. So I just let him do his thing. I was going to introduce myself once he graduated. But come that day, I get a call from Rick, John, and they're like, hey, we're trying to get a hold of Cullen. He's not answering. So I tell him, I was like, well, he's in the academy. He's probably at the range or something. They don't have their phones. So I was like, what do you want me to do? I'm not trying to overstep my boundaries. So I was like, do you want me to notify him? So they're like, could you please? So at this point, I called V. Lee. I was like, hey, Lee, this is Moreno from Narcotics. And I told him the story. I told him how he passed or who's passed and who's going to be affected by this. So I went down there, and me and Lee go to the academy. To the range, and break the news to Cullen. So it was pretty hard.
Yeah, not a fun situation there.
No. You don't ever want to break those news to anybody.
So let's get into why they called you.
Well, since I know Rick, I know John, because all those guys are part of the Brotherhood in Chicago. And I'm the president for the Dallas chapter of Brotherhood of the Fallen, so they knew that direct contact between us and them. So Cullen being one of their guys, and now he's one of our guys, they knew that was a connect for me to break the news.
So let's take this opportunity to jump into the Brotherhood for the Fallen. What is it, for starters?
Brotherhood for the Fallen is a nonprofit. We have 9 chapters throughout the country, and we are, 10 chapters now. Connecticut is the 10th. So it's a nonprofit, and we're all active police officers. Some chapters have retirees, reservists, and we raise money to send 2 representatives from our chapter to funerals across the nation. So I can speak on behalf of Dallas. What we do is we are 100% all Dallas police officers. Our chapter, we have around 800 members. They're all active. I think we might have about 10 reservists. and we raise money through various fundraisers, events throughout the year. We send 2 uniformed police officers to all funerals of officers killed by felonious attacks. So it doesn't natural cause, car accidents, those really don't fall under our mission, just because if that was the case, we'd be attending over 150 a year. So we designate just felonious attacks on police officers. Our chapter here in Dallas started whenever July 7th, 2016 started. Whenever we went to those funerals, it was 5 funerals, and we saw a huge number of Chicago PD, NYPD, Fort Worth PD that attended these funerals. And I started asking questions. I was like, how was it that you guys were able to come? Started asking the right questions to the right people, and they put me in the direction of Brotherhood for Fallen. So about a year later, we were the 5th or 6th chapter. 6th.
Roy, do you know what the oldest in the country is?
Chicago PD.
Chicago PD.
Chicago PD started in 2010.
Okay.
So 2010, Chicago started, and that was after Oakland PD. I believe they had 4 officers killed in line duty. So Chicago PD felt the need to be there for those guys in Oakland, California. They get in 2 squad cars. They call them cruisers, I believe. So they get in 2 cruisers, and they drive 2 squad cars from Chicago all the way to Oakland. And they attend those funerals. I think it was 6 or 8 of them. And that's the way Brotherhood for Fallen started.
Chicago started it. Did it kind of kick off the other eastern side of the country to join with Chicago and doing that?
Yeah, so the second chapter was NYPD.
Yeah.
So NYPD was the second chapter, and soon after Oakland had the 4 officers that were killed in line duty, Pittsburgh. I believe Pittsburgh had 4 killed in line duty at the same time. So whenever they did the same thing. They went over to Pittsburgh, attend that funeral. Obviously, there's NYPD there because it was a little bit closer. They saw a large number of Chicago, be like, how are you guys all here? So they started the second chapter in 2014. And then since then, it just kind of picked up.
So it's taking 4 years to get the other one going?
Yeah, to get going. The second one, Aurora, Colorado was the third one in 2014 as well. Since then, it's became the whole state of Colorado, just because that's a smaller department. 2016, whenever we lost our 5 here, Fort Worth and Suffolk County, New York started just because, the mass number of funerals that we had here in Dallas. And, that's how they started. I started asking questions. It took us about a year to get started here in Dallas after that.
How does the whole thing work?
So we have, we rely on all our membership. So we have about 800 Dallas police officers that are members. We have 2 fundraisers throughout the year. We used to do a July 7th remembrance event. It used to be huge, but, throughout the years, sometimes you come to the conclusion that you there's enough grieving, kind of just let it be. People want to attend. We typically get together and we hang out during that day, but we don't want to, put the families through the same stuff over and over and over. So our big ones are our gala in December. That's our big fundraiser.
What's the name of that?
The Blue Tie Gala. So our Blue Tie Gala is in December, and then we've merged with the Dallas 5, and we do the clay shoot we just had this past weekend. Those are the 2 big fundraisers. We have an online store, so merchandise, T-shirts, hats, tumblers, anything you can imagine, coins, patches, and then we have great sponsors. We have a lot of great support with the department and within the city of Dallas.
Name some of those sponsors for us.
We have LGI Homes used to be one of our biggest ones. Sarah and Ross Perot, Hunt Oil. We have Point Man Real Estate. We have Freedom Heating and Air. We have just a variety of them, just from top level corporations to your mom and pop's corporation or business.
Now, you guys don't just travel to local funerals, right? You travel all nationwide.
Yes, all 50 states, and as well as U.S. territory. So we've gone to Puerto Rico. We've been to Virgin Islands. God forbid, if there's one in Guam, we can go to Guam. Anywhere we use our Class A uniform, and you guys know our Class A uniform incorporates our duty belt. So anywhere that we can carry a pistol. A lot of chapters they'll go to Canada because they don't have a Sam Brown. But we'll wear it. We'll go anywhere we can carry our Sam Brown.
And so that means there's big travel expenses.
Yeah, a lot of expenses. So these are, as you know, these funerals, they're last minute. They're going to be within a week. If you have a week notice, that's pretty good. Sometimes they're within 3 to 4 days. So these are going to be last minute flights, last minute accommodations. But the department, Chief Garcia, we came on board with, who was the chief before Hall? The one that was
Brown.
No, the
Pews.
Pews, yes.
So whenever Pews was the interim, we started with him here, and he approved special assignment. And then with Hall, we met with her, did the same thing, and then with Garcia. Under Garcia, we get the 3-day special assignment. This is your duty assignment whenever you go on funerals. You get 3 paid work days, plus we will pay for the hotel, airfare, rental car. We pay for everything, and on top of that, we give you a check to give to the families. We typically average between 40 and 50 a year. Sometimes these are very last minute notices. We're not able to attend all of them, but every single one does get a check from the Dallas chapter. So even if we cannot attend it, we still mail out a check to them. We average, like I said, 45 to 50 a year. Some years are a little bit harder, so we'll go to 55, and every family gets one. So since 2017, we've averaged about 45 every year. So we've tried to help as many people as we can.
So you've got members that travel, and you've got members that don't travel also, right?
Correct. So some people on our application, we ask them, who wants to travel? Check yes. If you don't want to travel, check no. Some people that, everybody's willing to help. They're like, I don't want to travel, but I do want to contribute. So all that money, every penny, any dime, every dime, helps us out with our mission and send 2 Dallas representatives to these funerals.
And you can sign up just to have the monthly dues taken right out of your check?
Correct. It's roughly about $100 a year. It's a 26 pay period, so $4 a pay period. You can log on to our website, brotherhooddallastx.org, and there's a membership form on there that you can log on to and fill it out and become a member.
So for somebody who's not a police officer and they might want to help,
on that same website, we have a donation link. So anybody who's willing to donate towards our mission, you can just click on that donation. If you can do it one time, or you can do it continuously, either monthly or annually.
Now, I remember going to the funerals here in Dallas and seeing departments nationwide showing up, and it was a little bit awkward because I'd never seen that before. Mm-hmm. But to see like Boston PD show up and Chicago PD show up, and they're wearing their uniforms, that was impactful for me as just an attendee, right? Not even as a family member of one of the fallen, but I could imagine the family when they see that there are officers from all sorts of different departments. That kind of, that's got to give you a different feeling than just having people show up that are local.
Yeah, it's huge. It's that made an impact on me. So whenever I went to these funerals, that helped me with the visual and the emotional support. And that's why we felt the need to start a chapter here.
Going to multiple funerals a year, right? How many members do you actually have that travel right now?
That want to travel, probably half of them. But the thing is that, you have to rely on family, work, whatever, you have court.
Yeah, short notice stuff too.
They're short notice. So sometimes we do get volunteers, sometimes, and obviously depending on the destination, you're going to get a lot. Smaller towns, you're not going to get a lot of volunteers, but I remind them, I was like, it doesn't matter where you're going. It's a fallen brother, and we have to represent. They deserve, these small towns, they deserve the same attention and dedication than the big departments.
The mission stays the same.
Correct.
Funerals by themselves are just not fun, right?
No.
It's never a good time. But going to an officer's funeral and seeing the way it impacts their family, and having a family yourself, and realizing that you could put your family in that same situation. There's a lot of secondary grief and secondary trauma that goes into that. And, having, you said you have 800 members right now, mm-hmm. and about half of those want to travel. That's still, at 50 a year, that's going to burn through people.
Yeah.
And I know I preach it all the time about going and talking to somebody, but that's one of those things where if you don't have a system in place, you need to find a system, because, like your class advisor says, that's probably not the best idea to just compartmentalize it and push it down and never touch this again, because it might not be you reaching down and touching it, but something's going to trigger it one day, and it's going to come back up, and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's better to deal with it early and get it processed correctly so that it doesn't creep back up on you later.
Oh yeah, I remember being the first. I went on. We call them funeral deployments. I remember being the first one to go on one. When we first started, I think it was June 2017, just about a year after July 7th. And we started, we did all the paperwork, we get that going. I was like, all right, let's start petitioning or sending out these memos, see if we can get special assignment. And I remember we sent out these memos time and time again. They keep on getting denied. Because we had met with, I think we kind of introduced ourselves to NELO and DPA and be like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. Just to make sure that, we're not stepping on anybody's toes and doing the same mission. It's something different. And then we met with the command staff, kind of introduced them, introduced ourselves. We start sending off these memos. They keep on getting denied for special assignment. And kind of, you get frustrated, you get upset. And I remember Pews finally signs off on our first one. It was in Indiana. I don't know if he approved it because it was in Indiana. He was going to be like, call our bluff and be like, these guys aren't going to go. So I was like, oh shit, they approved one. So Major Swires now, he was my sergeant at the time. We used to be buddies, POs and corporals together. Now he's a major. At the time he was my sergeant. I was like, hey Swires, I was like, they approved one. And I was like, let's go. And he's like, okay, let's go. So I think we had maybe about $10,000 in the bank, and I didn't want to touch it. So I was like, all right, let's go. So instead of getting a flight, I drove my personal pickup. We went all the way to Indianapolis, Indiana. It took forever. We both drove down there, and I paid for my own hotel. And I was like, I didn't want to dip into that little, Brotherhood for the Fallen piggy bank. So I was like, I'm going to use my own money because let somebody else use it. And I do remember going to that funeral, and it was hard. It was hard because that trauma that you're talking about.
Yeah. So how were you received by their department?
Huge. They, I guess they were kind of already used to seeing at these funerals, especially Indiana being a little bit closer to New York. And I don't know if you know, but New York, their department already sends honor guards to all funerals nationwide. So they do that already. But with Brotherhood of the Fallen, now they send more representatives. So that was huge. They're kind of used to, and then Chicago being close to Indianapolis, they would, if there was a funeral, they would expect them to show up. But nobody expected us to be there. So whenever they saw the patch, everybody, I was a corporal at the time, so I've got the gold stripe on the side of the pants, and this uniform, everybody recognizes the uniform and the patch, and they were just in awe. They're like, oh my God. And it wasn't Indianapolis, it was Southport, Indiana, just south. It was a suburb just south of Indianapolis. The department is 30 officers. Only 2 of them were paid, and one of the paid officers was killed. All the other ones were reservists. So one of the 2 that are the only ones that were paid was the one that died, the lieutenant. So everybody was like in awe. They're like, oh my God, Dallas, what are y'all doing here? You drove all the way here? You flew all the way here? Be like, yeah. I mean, we're grieving for one of y'all's. They understood why we're there.
So does that solidify that, we're going to do this?
100%.
Because I know it's much like everything around here, trying to get approval for anything from building renovations to personnel. There's a lot of banging your head against the wall trying to figure out who you actually need to talk to and which way you need to go. And when you finally get something approved, it's a small win, right? But to actually show up there and have them appreciate all the effort you put into it, that right there will make you want to do it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It definitely rewarding. Happy, relieved whenever they first approved the first one. But after that, we knew it was going to take off, and we knew it was going to be a full-time job on top of our regular job. So,
And you're coming up on 7 years of running this, huh? Or 8?
yeah, seven. So 2017 to now. So if I can find somebody to replace me yesterday, come on.
Looking for some young leadership here.
Yeah.
For sure. Cullen, you're fairly involved with the Brotherhood already.
Yeah, so you touched upon it earlier with the Chicago guys, how they started it. So those 8 officers who started it were all guys who worked with my dad. So I remember when I was 11 years old when the Brotherhood started. I remember when it started. So I've always known about it. So when I came out here, John McKenna, the guy I talked about earlier, my father figure, he's like, oh, you have to join the Brotherhood. You have to be super involved. You know, I'm super involved, so you have to do it. And I was like, of course. So I always knew I wanted to be involved when I learned Dallas does have a chapter. And so ever since I got out of the academy, if they ever need help volunteering, I will be there. No matter how quick the turnaround is, I've slept a couple hours before and then right to the Brotherhood. If they need help with event setup, I'll be there. That's just something that it's a mission statement that I'm always will feel connected with. Just for every reason that we've talked about today, that's why the Brotherhood means so much to me. And when I've traveled, what really drives me to do it is I've traveled twice. I've gone to Chicago for Andres Vasquez Lazo, and then I just went to Knoxville, Tennessee for Greg McCowan. Both times, and I've been on the receiving end of it, you're in a sea of people. Who everyone's there to pay their respects, but a lot of people don't understand the grief you have behind this, and you have to kind of put on a mask because so many people are there to support you, but it's very overwhelming, and it's a lot of people who don't understand what you're going through. And so when I travel, I'm one of the people in that sea of people, but both times I've worked a time where I've individually went up to the family, the widows, the wives, and I've talked to them one-on-one, explained who I am, that I'm with the Brotherhood of the Fallen, and that I have an idea of what they're going through, and I explain it and just give them my piece of advice. I'm 20 years on this journey of losing your loved one in the line of duty. They're most of the times 1 week, and I just give my advice of just what I think of in that moment. And both times I've done it, very receptive, instantly break out crying, and you bring up the secondhand traumas because I've been there. I remember what it feels, remember what it looked like, remember the smells, I remember the sounds, I remember the bagpipes being played, all of that. Every time I travel, it takes me back to August 8th, 2004, and every time since then I've heard it. And that's why I keep doing it, and I'm super involved, is because if I can be there for the family and they're the worst day that they're having in their lives, and that week's the worst time they've ever experienced, and if I can help a little bit, then it's worth it. That's the big reason why I came on this podcast, is because I listened to Mr. and Mrs. Penton, and then I listened to Shelly Houston, and they have an idea of what I went through, and I have an idea of what they went through. We'll never fully understand each other's traumas, but we have an idea. And if our 3 episodes, another family's listening to this, then they get some solace out of it, then it's worth it. That's why the Brotherhood of the Fallen is so important for me, and that's why I'm super involved with trying to get more members to join. And every time we talk at the academy, I always will go and tell my story with my dad and why it's important for me. And every time I've gone, I've either gotten an entire class to sign up or one person doesn't sign up. That's every one time I've spoken. And so I know that gives me some, I would say, pride, is that I know that, because also, I mean, Chief Garcia, what, 25% of our department's eligible to retire? How many of those people are Brotherhood members? We have to get young people to keep this going, because there are some chapters who struggle, and they don't make all the funerals, and they're trying their best, but I don't want that for Dallas. I don't want that for any chapter, so we need to find people who are young, who want this to keep going, who are involved, because so we can keep just providing support for their families for their worst times in their entire lives, because it's not for us, it's for them. So that's why everything with the mission statement is so important to me. And that's why I will continue to be involved my whole career. No matter where it takes me, I'll always be involved with Brothers of the Fallen.
That's powerful, man. All right, that's quite a bit of heavy stuff for for a one episode podcast. Let's jump back into some of the field training stuff. And Cullen, tell us about some of your experiences in training.
So I have a few calls that stick out. So on my very first day, I was on third watch. Someone in the Grove, I guess they were going to run a search warrant for a tiger. Someone had a tiger in the Grove, and he released it. And so my first day, I'm sitting in detail. They had me stand up, do the whole 9 yards, and then they read off the detail sheet. And they're like, all right, Gordon and DeMag, you guys are on tiger duty. Go around the Grove and look for it. And in my head, I was like, all right, I'll do it. And it didn't even dawn on me for about 4 hours into shift. And I asked my trainer, I was like, the fuck are we doing? And he's like, what? I was like, what do we even do if we find it? Like, I was like, I don't know how to wrangle a tiger. I was like, do we call animal control? I was
Here,
like,
kitty.
Yeah, I was just like, what are we doing, dude? He goes, I have no idea.
Bring in the sheriffs. Just make the call.
Figured out, rookie.
So we just do the whole thing. And then in my head, I was like, I'm not going to shoot a tiger because I know SWAT shot a gorilla in the outlash they got. I was like, I don't want to shoot a tiger out in Pleasant Grove. So that was a memorable call. I'll never forget that. Oh God. And then I will say the first one where I realized, all right, like it's real. Like this profession's real. Like, I mean, I've been raised in it my whole life. And in my first, like, let's say instance where I was like, okay, yeah, this is legit was, we were driving on Syene and Buckner. We were going eastbound on Syene, and an armed encounter comes out. It's the Spanish Ridge or Spanish Vista apartments over there on Buckner and or maybe it's like Spanish Loft, Spanish Vista, Spanish something. It's on Buckner, and it's just south of Buckner and Syene. So I was like, oh, we're close. I know exactly where this is at. Just flip it around, reroute us. The call comments were a black male shooting a gun, and he's walking with a guy in a wheelchair. It's pretty specific. So as I'm driving south on Buckner, sure as shit, I see a dude in a wheelchair is going across the street, and there's a dude walking with them. I was like, oh, they're going to the tire shop. So make the call. I said, hey, it's not at the apartments. It's going to be at the tire shop. No one goes. It's just me and my trainer. So I made the call. I was like, all right, he's sitting down, so we're going to come from behind him, and we'll just grab him. And because if the gun's involved, we're not approaching him head on. So I go up, go to grab him. I guess I was not in line with my trainer. I wasn't on the same page. So I grabbed him first. My trainer was behind me. So he throws himself basically off me, and now we're face to face, and he's indexing a front waistband. I know what's coming. I know what he has. And it's kind of those moments where like, all right, it's starting to get a little bit real. So as soon as we're 2 to 3 feet away from each other, and he's just saying, what bitch, what bitch, what bitch. And I was like, okay, I'm getting ready. I'm like, this is about to be a 3-foot gunfight. And I go to unholster up, and he's so hyper locked on me. So if he draws, I know where that round's coming. And so I go to draw too. But my trainer, his name's Chris Sloan. I will always be grateful for him. He realized that he was so hyper locked on me that he doesn't even realize that Sloan's with me. So he goes around behind him, full Nelson zone. And from there, fight's on. So we're fighting with this dude. As we're fighting him, I see an officer dives in and is out. So I'm still fighting this dude, and we handcuff him. And I look over, and I see it's a compact 45, right where he was grabbing front waistband. And that's my first realization where I was like, okay, this is real. And okay, that was eye-opening experience in a way. And I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful it turned out well for us, but it was definitely a phenomenal learning experience. And the last call that really stands out, it's bothered me. I was two days off of Little T, and me and my partner, Kim, we weren't allowed to ride with each other yet because we're still both on probation, but we can ride solo and we can tag the same calls, but we can't ride together.
Yeah, rules and such.
Yeah, it's weird, but so I was like, okay. So we're in the squad car mating position, and he's like, all right, pick a call. It's 4:45 in the morning. We're on deep nights, and it's a 4001 over off of Cypress Cove, over off Kleberg in the Deep Grove. It's the Ellis County Sheriff's Office over there on I'm trying to think of some cities that are in Ellis County. I don't know. It's close to Dallas. I'm not from here. So they put in a call for a missing juvenile who ran away from home like 3 days prior.
Was that a Waxahachie, I believe?
Yeah, Waxahachie, yeah. So that missing juvenile ran away from home with her friend, texted her sister, and they notified 911 in Ellis County that she messaged her on a fake Instagram saying, I was just raped. Send help, and gives us the address. That's it. And so I take the calls. All right, let's see what this is like. So I get out there, and we're both 2 days off Little T. So he was letting me kind of run it, my partner, and he's like, all right, like you run with it, like do what you want to do. I was like, okay, let's slow it down. Let's not knock and talk this door because we don't know what's coming. So I reach out to Ellis County. They give me at least the father's point of contact. I talked to the father. It wasn't him who called. It was his daughter who called. I called the daughter, and I started asking her what's going on, what she's sending you. So she sent me a series of Instagram messages, and she said she ran away from her home with this girl, and give us the name and the description. She took her to this home since they ran away, and she said 2 or 3 black males came over, paid a dude a fee, and they held her down and raped her in her room. And she sent her the address and said, please come, please help me. So I'm talking with the sister, and it's hard. Working child sex assault cases are, for me and everyone, it's just hard to listen to, hard to deal with. And so she sends everything to me, and then she's like, please, like, help me find my sister. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to do it. All right. And hang up the phone. My partner's on the phone with Fusion, and they do the background check, and it comes out that the house, that the address they gave is a home of a registered sex offender, and his offense was raping a 16-year-old girl. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I guess we're going to have to knock and talk the door and see if he'll let us in. We knock, instantly lets us in. Yeah, come on in. We start searching, and he's like, what are you guys looking for? We're like, oh, we're here for a health and welfare check for a missing juvenile. And instantly, still gives me chills. The guy goes, it's next door. Next door is what you're looking for. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, there's some weird stuff going on in there. And he's like, yeah, it's like sex trafficking. And all I said was that we're looking for a missing juvenile, health and welfare check. And he started giving us like the sex trafficking and everything. It bothered me. The fact that I know that he's a registered sex offender for raping a 16-year-old, and we're looking for a girl at roughly the same age, and you know what's going on next door, it bothered me. Whatever, so I talked to the other neighbor. By then, a few hours has passed, and I knock and talk finally at the door to the house. Every single door was boarded up and blocked. Every single window had burglar bars on it. The front door had a padlock on the front door. Everything in the house looked like it was meant to keep people out and in. Just everything about it. So she opens the door. Hi, how's it going? I was like, oh, hi, how's it going? I'm Officer Gordon, health and welfare check, and just sweet talk her in. She goes, oh, I'm not the owner of the house. I go, are you an adult? And she's like, yeah. And I go, oh, we can come in. Like, you can give us a consent to come in. All she said was, okay. So I just take one step into the house. Now I'm in. Instantly, I see on the back door, there's a Jamaican roadblock in the back door. Just anyone who's listening, I know Lieutenant Taylor's talked about it. It's just a big wooden board that's blocking the back door, so it keeps people out and in. I notice what looks like a 25-year-old man on the couch is cuddling with a girl who easily looks 14. But she gives us the name and an ID that doesn't come back to anything, but it comes back to a city ticket out of Waxahachie, and the person is 18. But in my experience, I don't know if it's a sister, I don't know what, but to me she looked young. And on the other couch was the friend that the missing juvenile is what we're looking for. I go, great, this is the house. I start going through the house. We're searching, doing our welfare checks. We have to look where a juvenile can be. We look in a washing machine, and she goes, oh, a missing teenager won't be in there. And the person who came help me is like, we never said anything about a missing teenager. We looked for a missing juvenile. So everyone in the house knows what we're there for. We get to the back house. I see 7 young kids who are cuddling in one bed together on the floor. There's dog cages everywhere in one of the rooms, and there's no dogs in the house. And inside the garage was stripped down cars, ski masks. It's just everything in this house is off. And once they're like, can you leave? I'm like, no, I'm not leaving. At this point, we have enough to detain everyone in this house. And we searched the whole thing, and she's not there. And in my mind, it was just kind of like I put in all this work and expected to get an outcome, and I didn't get the outcome I wanted. And so that just absolutely bothered me for a very long time. And it just, you do the police work and you expect the positive outcome. And I think that call sticks out with me is because you can do everything right and do all the work, and the result that you want, it might not be the result you get. And I realized afterwards, it was still bothering me. It still was aggravating me, and I ended up reaching out to Roy at first, and he told me a different experience and gave the context. He's like, yes, some of this stuff just is going to live with you for a little bit. And that's a call that has stuck out for me. And I know I'm supposed to, the kind of work I kind of like to do, I found that I like 3 things to do. And I know Holguin will always say, you're too young, learn how to do everything. I get it. I don't like tickets. I don't like accidents. But I will say fugitives, wanted people, dope. And it sounds weird in a way, but child 25s is something that I know a lot of officers will stay away from because of what you experience. But from that call, I believe that's also why I became very drawn to working child 25s, was because, in my opinion, these people are true victims. I can't tell you, everyone in this room has worked a shooting where it is a gang member on a gang member who was killed in a crossfire, or they were targeting each other and they both shot at each other, one died. And you go through their rap sheet and it's extended, both sides. And they both, in my opinion, it's not a true victim. It's kind of occupational hazard at that point. Right. But kids experience sex assaults. It's something that's, in my opinion, is the most horrendous thing you can do to another human being is rape a child who is a very defenseless person. That's why I found I'm very drawn to those calls and just fugitives and narcotics. It's interesting to me. But yeah,
boy, do I have a spot for you.
Yeah, right.
I got a whole division of guys that do that.
Yeah, and yeah, so there's whole divisions. Like if I ever become an investigator, I know that there's ICAC. I know there's child abuse, child X, human high risk sex trafficking. Then with narcotics, there's a whole division it's all they do is narcotic related stuff. And then fugitive, there's a whole unit. That's why I think being with a big department like Dallas, there is a lot of opportunity for you to like figure out and do something that you truthfully enjoy. That's why my family has said too, it's like policing kind of like a pick your own adventure kind of book, and you really can do that with a major department.
Yeah, no, for sure. But with all those divisions you just listed, we've interviewed a couple people from most of those at this point. And the reason is we want those people to understand that you do carry a lot of secondary trauma, right? And to do that job the way you want to do it well, and to do it for a long term, you've got to get your mental health right early. If you wait for a long time, then it's hard to catch up. But one of the things that we're really trying to push is the educational point of deal with your mental health, right? Get right before you need to get right.
Yep.
And that's the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody at this point in my career is take care of your mental health early and don't let it creep up on you.
100%. Because I was raised on the whole old school mindset of policing. I've seen it. My whole family's like it. They're raised on the put it down in a box, like Sergeant Lee said, and compartmentalize it. and I was raised on it. And I did it for years with my dad. Years. And it wasn't until I was in college. I had a rugby coach. His name's Coach Hine. He's a big South African guy. Super involved with religion and everything. He reached out to me one day and just talked to him. And when I started talking to him about my dad, that's when I kind of started realizing a lot of my anger. I was a very quick-tempered person. I was a very confrontational type of person, and I realized that a lot of that stemmed from my dad. And with him, I realized that the old school way of dealing with it, it's not, for me, it wasn't the way that it worked for me. I had to talk about it. I had to, like, I would say I started talking about stuff with my dad about 5 years ago, and I've noticed drastic improvements in my life. And if you told me 4 years ago, 5 years ago to be a police officer, I would have been fired by now, 100%. And so that's why it's helped me a lot, and that's why now also when I talk about stuff that we experience at work, I'm very open about it with what happened that day. I know I'm like, okay, I have to talk about different stuff, because if I let this stuff eat at me, it's you are going to let this job change who you are, which is the complete opposite of what I want. So that just out of me, I became very open with the wellness side and talked to people about it, because you experience a lot with this profession. Anyone who's getting into this profession, I will say, don't listen to like the macho guy that you're too tough to talk about your certain stuff you've dealt with, because I'm only young in my career. I have not dealt with nearly enough as everyone in this room has, because if you do this stuff for a long time, you get exposed to a lot. But even from a year on, I will say just reach out and talk to people. And if you're getting into this profession, because it does help, don't let this stuff eat at you.
Yeah, I get about 2 calls from Cullen a week, and we talk about different things, and he called me about that call. I had to share my story and how my story still kind of lives with me, and that was one of the talking points whenever I saw Dottie. So, we talked about counseling and all that stuff, so he definitely needs to, he was open to it, and he's already done it, so he was very exposed to the idea to it.
So it's interesting you said your rugby coach kind of brought it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
I've been going to a chiropractor for about 3 months maybe, and I feel like every time we have a conversation where I kind of dump stuff on her. And I told her last week, I was like, hey, I'm sorry if I really kind of dump a lot of heavy stuff on you, but you ask a lot of questions and it just comes out, but talking about it, like what we're doing here today, is basically what you would do if you go to therapy, right? You just talk about it with other people. And there's healing properties in that, and that's why I enjoy this podcast. Is not only did it help me open up to where I can talk to people, but now in return, we're giving other people the opportunity to come out and talk about their struggles too. And it's powerful, man. It really is. I really enjoy what we do here. One last thing, you kind of touched on it a little bit. The advice for people getting involved in policing. You got anything else on that?
I will say, just involved with people who want to get involved with policing. It's not a job. If you're getting in this for a job to pay, it's not the right profession for you, because policing is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change. If you are not a good human being, you're not going to be a good police officer. And we've seen it. Everyone's seen it. Different people who get involved for the wrong reasons, and they become a very horrible police officer. And you have to truly know what you're getting into, because I believe a lot of people get culture shocked who have not been exposed to law enforcement, and it isn't for everyone. I'm sure everyone in here has had classmates where they get out there on the street and they're like, nope, I'm good. And even now with me, I've had several of my classmates leave already from Dallas, and we're like, nope, this is not for me. Just know that it's very real. You will experience a lot of stuff that no one will experience. And the unfortunate truth is and I'll always say, it's a reality that when the academy, when they tell you there's a chance that someone might not come home or you might not come home, I'm a living example of that. I've known that my whole life with my dad, is that my dad never came home that day. So if you want to get into policing, do it for, I would say at the very least, is do it for everyone who has not came home. You have every single person who just didn't come home that day, they would have given anything to put that vest on one more time. And if you're out here and you don't understand that, I believe you should not be in this profession. Just know that every decision you make matters. And do it for them, at the very least.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.